Hey, it's Alish from Hopscotch headquarters in New York City, and I want you to get angry because today we're going to learn how to make Angry Birds. Really? Alright, so right off the bat, I'm just going to say, if you're new to Hopscotch, you might want to watch some other videos first, maybe play a few levels, just get the hang of things before we dive into this one. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is grab an Angry Bird. So you can pick anything you want. I'm going to pick an emoji, which is a text object. So grab a text object. And to see them, you're going to have to enable emoji on your keyboard. So once you've done that, you should see this button. And then to get the birds, we want to go to nature, which is around here. And you can pick any bird you want, maybe one of these four. I'm going to pick this one because he's a pigeon and I'm in New York, and that's cool. By the way, for all you city dwellers, have you ever seen a baby pigeon? I don't think they exist. I bet that pigeons are just like born as adults, because otherwise, why don't we ever see the babies? Anyway, press done with your bird, and in Angry Birds, the birds are facing the right. So the first thing we want to do is flip this guy. So add a new rule. When the play button is tapped, which just means when the project starts, go to movement and pull out a flip block, and that's all you got to do. And then let's press play, and it's looking the other way. Great. So next, let's make a slingshot. So get out of here, go back to your objects menu, pull out another text object, and let's just call it Y, because we're just going to use the Y letter to look like a slingshot. And let's make it bigger and brown. So add a new rule. When the play button is tapped, let's set size, which is under looks and sounds, set size to 400%, so 4 times as big. And let's make it brown. So pull out set text, and then tap on this keyboard button, remove this stuff, and press Y. Press done, and now we can change the color, which is right here, and I'm going to pick brown. Again, you can pick any color you want. And the last thing we're going to do is send to back, because the last object you add to a project is by default in front of all the ones before it, unless you add send to back or bring to front. So sending to back, and we have a slingshot. And now, let's go back to edit, and when the project starts, I want the bird to be on the slingshot. So if I ever have to move it around, I don't want to have to move the bird around each time too, so I'm going to use code to place it at the slingshot no matter where the slingshot is. So back in the when the play button is tapped rule, not a new rule, the first one, go to movement again, pull out set position, very cool block, and here for these bubbles, let's go to values and tap on this gray arrow next to your bird until you find the Y's values. And this is where we can access the Y's size, rotation, position, and visibility. So I want to set the X position to Y's X position. And then I want to set, so tap on the second bubble for the Y part, go to values again, and let's set bird's Y position to Y's Y position. I know, so many Y's. Okay, press check. Let's check that. All right, when the project starts, this is where the bird is, and that's great. Let's go back to edit. Okay, so for this to look like Angry Birds, we want to be able to move the bird around with our finger, and then when we let it go, it's going to launch forward. So for that first part, we need to be able to drag the bird around. So let's exit out of here, and let's add a new rule, and let's go to more for the whens, and let's find is pressed. And then pick bird for this. So for the is pressed, let's go to movement and pull out a set position. And go back to values, tap on this gray arrow, and find last touched X, which is where your finger is horizontally. And then for Y, tap on the Y bubble, go to values again, pick last touch Y, and that tells you how high your finger is at any given moment. Press check. And now we don't need to put a repeat forever around this because this already is repeat forever. The difference between tapped and pressed is tapped only happens the moment you touch something. Pressed happens forever until you stop touching it. So it's sort of like a repeat loop in and of itself. So great, let's exit out of here, let's play it, let's see if it worked. Bird starts at the slingshot, and if I move it around, it moves with me. That's so cool. Okay, now let's make it look even more slingshotty by adding strings. So pull out a text object, and let's call this string 1. So because we've named this, we don't want to see the word string 1. So the first rule is going to be when the play button is tapped, set invisibility, which is under looks and sounds, 100% invisible. Okay, so next I want to position the string in the beginning to be on the top left edge of the Y. So we want the slingshot to start here, which is actually the Y's X position minus 50 and Y's Y position plus like 60. So let's do that. So go back to edit, back to this string and this rule we already have. Go to movement and set position. Pick the minus sign because we're going to be on the left of this. Go to values. Go over to the slingshot's values. Pick the slingshot's X position minus 40. Just to the left of it. Slingshot's Y position. Pick the plus button. Go to values. Pick the slingshot's Y position and then add 60. Okay, so you're not going to see anything if you play it, but this object is now going to be over here the moment the game starts, which is important, and you'll understand why in a bit. So then let's add a second rule, and this rule is pretty cool. We're going to draw a line between that end of the slingshot and the bird rapidly anytime we're pressing the bird, and it's going to look like there's a string connecting the slingshot to the bird. So let's see what I'm talking about. So pick is pressed. When the bird is pressed, that's the event for when this will happen. And then pick drawing. Pull out a lever trail and pick the color string you want. I'm going to pick gray. And the width is going to be the width of the string, and I'm going to pick 2. Press check. Drag this move forward off. We're going to use set positions here. Go to movement. So first we're going to set position. If it's already in the slingshot's position, then we have to move it over to the bird's position. So to do that, we're going to go to values, and then we go to the bird's values. So for the X, we pick the bird's X position, and then for Y, we pick the bird's Y position. Make sure you have X here, Y here. Great. So that drew the line to the bird, and it's gray, and its width is 2. So we're going to change the color now to white, or whatever your background is. So my background is white right now, so I'm going to make this white. Press check. Then change the width to something bigger than 2. Let's do 4, because this is basically an eraser erasing the line we just drew, because we need this line to be redrawn all the time so that it looks like it's moving around with the bird. And then we set position back to where we started. Press minus here, go to values, go all the way to the slingshot, pick the slingshot's X position, and subtract 40. So it's like just to the left of the center of the slingshot. Then for Y, press the plus button, go to values, pick the slingshot's Y position, and add 60. Oh my god, so much work. Let's see what it looks like. So you're moving the bird around? Cool, it looks like there's a string attached to the end. So then if you want to make the other string, you would add a new text, call it string 2, and then you do all the same stuff as string 1, except that here it would be the slingshot's X position plus 40, but everything else would be the same. You'd make these two rules, and here this would be plus 40 again. So if you want to pause the video and do that, then this is what that will end up looking like. So that's what you would do, but for the sake of keeping this video shorter, I'm not going to do that for now, but that's what you would do. Okay, so now we have the bird moving around when we move it around. But once we let go, we need the bird to recognize we've let it go so that it can launch across the screen. And this is the interesting part, because the bird knows when we're pressing it, but the bird doesn't know when we've stopped pressing it, and that's what we need to teach it. So the way we're going to teach it to recognize that is with values. So credit for this cool trick, by the way, goes to Italics, whose super cool project, Stick Kicking, inspired this part of the code. Go to bird and make a new rule. So add a new rule. So when the bird is pressed, we need to create a value that tells the objects that the bird has been pressed. So we're going to go to values and we're going to pull out a set value. And let's tap on the gray arrow next to bird. And let's add a new value. And let's call it bird has been pressed. And tap on it, and now it's here in this block. And when this value equals 0, that tells everybody that the bird has not been pressed. And when it equals 1, that's going to tell everybody that it has been pressed. So let's tap this and call it 1. And so when bird is pressed, we have a value called bird has been pressed. This will be very useful for us later. So now pull out another set value block and let's add a new value yet again. And let's call this value freebird for all you Leonard Skinner fans. And tap on it, press check, and this we're going to leave at 0. So whenever the bird is pressed, this value freebird will be set to 0. And because this is a repetitive function, this will constantly be happening. It will be constantly being set to 0. Now lastly, and this is very important, you need to drag this set value freebird to 0 block above the set value bird has been pressed to 1 block. If this isn't above this, then your bird, as you're dragging it, is going to start to sink, and you'll understand why in a bit. So now exit out of this rule. Let's add a new rule and say when the play button is tapped, we're going to make freebird increase by 1 constantly. So go down to control flow, pull out a repeat forever, then go back to values and pull out increase value, not set value, and then tap on this gray arrow until you find freebird and increase it by 1. Okay, what is going on here? So here, whenever the bird is not pressed, this value is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I can show you. And you don't have to follow along on this part. I just want to show you what this number looks like. So just watch. Dragging a text, calling it freebird. And I'm going to add a new rule. When the play button is tapped, repeat forever, set the text to this value, freebird. Okay, so I'm not touching the bird, and this number just keeps getting bigger and bigger whenever I'm not touching the bird, much like a free bird, right? But when I touch the bird, it's suddenly getting set to 0 constantly, and it's trying to get bigger, but it's stuck. It can't get any higher than 3. So much like a bird in a cage, it's stuck in this small range between 0 and 3. If I let go, it gets bigger. If I touch it, it's stuck there, right? So we're going to look at this value later and use it to determine whether or not we're touching the bird. Okay? If it gets bigger than 3, we know that the bird's not being touched. If it's not bigger than 3, then we know the bird is being touched. But what this doesn't distinguish is whether or not it was never touched at all, like in the beginning of a project, or if it's been touched and then is no longer touched. That's where that other value we created comes into play. Right? If we go to this bird again and go to here, bird has been pressed becomes 1 when we press bird, and it never goes back to 0. It's a one-way street for this value. So I can actually show you that too if you want. Bird been touched. And the play button is tapped. Don't follow along, I'm just showing you. Set text to bird been pressed all day long. So this is 0 until we touch it. And if we let go, it's still 1 now. Here's the cool part. If this value is any bigger than 3 and this value is 1, what can that mean? It can only mean that we've been pressing the bird and we've let go. And that's how we tell the bird to launch. So let's write that rule. So go to Edit, go to Bird. So add a new rule, and go all the way down to the bottom of the whens and find bigger than. And go to Values, tap on the gray arrow until you find Freebird. Press check. Now if Freebird is ever bigger than 3, what does that mean? It means we're not touching the bird, right? Actually, let's make it safe and let's make it bigger than 5. Press check. So if that's true, then let's also check one other thing. And to check, we go to Control Flow and pull out a check once if, and pick equals, and go to Values, and find bird has been pressed. If that's true, if that value equals 1, then we know that we've just let the bird go after pressing it. And so here we can write our launch code. So the first thing we want to do when the bird launches is create a value called launch. So go to values and pull out a set value block and put it inside this check once if, and let's tap on the gray arrow next to bird, and we're in the iPad's values, add a new value right down here, and let's call it launched. So if you tap on it or you drag it into here, it'll be in here, and let's set it to 1. So this value will equal 1 when the bird is in the air. It has been let go and it is flying. So now when we write the rules for what the bird does when it's in the air, they can look at this value and see what number it is in order to determine whether or not to start. So then when the bird goes in the air, its speed and direction are going to be based on 2 things. The first is how far back it's pulled from the slingshot, and the second is how far up or down it's pulled. The further back, the faster it's going to fly forward. The further down, the higher it will launch. So to get the bird to do this, we need to make more values. So go back to edit, and we're in this rule. So let's drag in another set value, and let's put it above the set value launched block, but within the check once if. All right, so add a new value, and let's call it forward speed. Press done. Drag it into here. So this speed is going to be based on how far back the bird is. And to measure that, we can subtract the bird's X position from the slingshot's X position. So let's write that. So tap into this bubble and pick minus. And then for the first thing, go to values and let's find the slingshot's X position. You think you can find it? There it is. X position. Great. Press check. Now to access the second bubble, tap on it. And we're subtracting from this the bird's X position. So go to values, find the bird, pick its X position. Cool. So if it's much further to the left, this will be a big number. If it's right up next to the slingshot, it will be a small number. But whatever it is, that will determine the speed it moves forward when we let go. All right, now let's work on the upward speed. So add another set value block and put it right in between these 2 yellow blocks. Tap on the gray arrow, we're in the iPad's values, and let's pick plus new value. Let's call this upward speed. Press done. You can tap on it or drag it in here. And likewise, we're going to set this to the distance the bird is above or below the slingshot. So pick minus, and then for the first value, pick the slingshot's height or Y position, and then for the second bubble, go to values again and pick the bird's height or Y position. Press check. Cool. Okay, so we have these numbers, we've given them names, but that's not going to do anything yet because we need to make a new rule that puts this into effect. So add a new rule to the bird and go down to equals. There it is for the when. And so we want to start this rule when the bird is launched. So go to values, tap on the gray arrow until you're in the iPad's values, and find launched. So when launched equals 1, we want to move forward at a speed set by that forward speed value. So go to movement and drag out a set position block. And then tap in the plus button, and for your first value, go to your bird's X position, and for your second value, add in a divide sign. I know this is complicated, but bear with me. And for the first value here, pick forward speed and divide that by 8. Press check. And then for Y, we don't want Y to be affected by this code. So go to values and go to your bird's values and pick whatever the Y position is. So bird's Y position. So what does this mean? This is basically customizing your own change X by code. So every time launch equals 1, which is constantly, you're setting your bird's X position to itself plus 1/8 of this value. And so it's sort of like stop motion animation. It's like the bird is going to move a small amount every iteration of this code. And the Y position will just be the bird's Y position, which we will code later. So now you can see, pull a little bit, slow. Pull a lot, fast. And it goes to the slingshot and then stops. Do you know why? Because, let's go back to edit, and let's exit out of this rule and go back to the one right before it. Because this rule is still happening. Because bird has been pressed still equals 1, and free bird is still bigger than 5. So these blocks continue to run. So we keep resetting the speed to the distance between the bird and the slingshot, and that gets smaller and smaller as the bird moves forward. So we need to cut off access to these blocks once we've let go of the bird. And the way we do that is we add another check once if gate. So go down to control flow, pull out check once if, and put it right here above the yellow blocks within the check once if. Now let's pick equals, and we're going to check if launched equals 0. So go to values, find launched, which is under iPad's values, check if it's 0, and put these three things in there. So this way, if we haven't launched the bird yet, which is true the first time, then the moment we let go, it'll set the speed for upward and forward, and then it will set launch to 1. And then once launched is 1, when this rechecks again, it'll skip this loop because it's only going to come in here if launched equals 0, which it no longer does. So now let's see what happens. Pull a little bit, slow. Pull a lot, fast. This is good for the forward speed, but now we need to deal with the upward speed. So add a new rule, pick equals again for the when, values, tap until you find the iPad's values, pick when launched equals 1. Press check, and now we're going to change the height. So go to movement, and we're going to do the same thing we did with the forward speed, now with the upward speed and the Y component of the bird. Drag out a set position, and then for X, we don't want to affect X, so go to value and just pick the bird's X position. Press check, and then for the Y component, add plus again. We're going to add the bird's Y position, so go to values, bird's Y position, and then for the second bubble, pick divide, go to values, and find the upward speed, press check, and we might have to play around with this number. I'm going to say 3 actually. So what this number is doing and what that 8 was doing from the last rule is basically affecting the power of the slingshot. If you make this number too low, the bird is just going to shoot off the screen like a bullet. If you make it too high, the slingshot's not going to launch it very far at all. And you can play around with these numbers to see what they actually do. It's pretty interesting. But anyway, let's press play. Boom. Okay, so why isn't it going back down? What happened to gravity? Well, we never wrote a rule for gravity. So we're going to have to do that now. So go to edit and get out of here. Add another rule. Pick equals. Again, it's when launched equals 1. So values, find launched, then find 1, press check. And now go to values and pull out an increase value and pick upward speed and then increase it by -4. So this is basically emulating gravity. We're saying that every moment the bird is in the air, when launched equals 1, we're going to decrease the bird's upward speed. So if we pull the bird down a lot, it'll start out with a high upward speed, but it will constantly be decelerating downward. And at some point it'll crest at 0 upward speed, and then it'll start getting negative upward speed, and it'll come back down. So let's see what that looks like. Woo! Nice, and you just learned about projectile motion. Now let's give it something to hit. So go to edit, get out of here, and let's drag out a new object. Text object, and let's go to emoji, and let's find the pig. Obviously you can pick anything, but in the style of Angry Birds, I'm going to pick the pig. And I want the pig to do 2 things. When the project starts, I want the pig to appear in a random position, and then when the bird hits it, I want it to turn and disappear. So let's do both rules. So first rule, when the project starts, when the play button taps, let's set position, which is under movement. And for X, let's pick random from 500 to 1000. So it's on the right side of the screen. And then from Y, let's pick random from 100 to 700. And then let's add a new rule. Pick bumps for the when, and let's pick when the bird bumps the pig. Press check. And when the bird bumps the pig, I want the pig to turn 360 degrees and then disappear. So you think you can figure that out? Go to movement, turn 360, press check, and then go to looks and sounds for invisibility. Set invisibility, drag it out to 100. All right, now let's see if we can play Angry Birds. And it might take a couple tries to get used to. Yes, got it. Unbelievable. Okay, so that's Angry Birds, but let's add a background now. So exit out of here. Let's add a new text, and we can call it background. Add a new rule. When the play button is tapped, let's draw the sky first. So go to drawing, leave a trail. Let's pick light blue or whatever color you want. Let's make the width 3000 so it covers the whole screen. And we only have to move forward 1. So a big dot covers the screen in light blue. Then, before we draw the ground, let's set the speed to 99 trillion so that we don't see it drawing the ground slowly. And let's also make the text object invisible. Because we called this background, we don't want to see the word background all over the place. So let's set invisibility to 100. Put that on the top. Okay, so then let's draw the ground. And to do that, we need to start right over here, which is x equals 0, y equals 100. So go to set position, pick x equals 0, y equals 100. Then let's leave a trail. Make it green, width 200. You can obviously play around with these numbers to make whatever background you want. And let's move forward the length of the screen, which is 1024. And let's see what that looks like. Cool. Okay, so if your slingshot is too high, by the way, you can just move it. And because we set the position of the bird and the strings relative to the slingshot, they will move as well, which is cool. I'll actually show you, why not? If I move this down, everything else moves down with it. Then you can play. Okay, so now we have this new problem, which is that we are drawing a gray and white path with the slingshot strings, right? So we need to fix that. So because the background up here is blue, let's make that first change. So go to Edit, and go to your string, and pick the when the bird is pressed rule. And where you change the trail color to white, let's change it to light blue. And let's do that with the other one too. So string 2, bird is pressed, change trail color to light blue here as well. So let's see if that fixes it. Okay, it fixes it up here, but not down here, right? So now we got to do another thing. When the bird is below 200, we need to redraw the grass instantly. So let's do that. So go to Edit, and go to your background, and add a new rule, and find smaller than. And pick, and then go to values and find the bird and pick its Y position. Now tap on the second bubble and pick 200. And we're checking if the bird is ever lower than the ground. So then, if that's ever true, we're going to set the background object here, and then we're going to draw the green grass again. So first, to set position, you go to movement, pull out a set position, and pick 0, 100. Then we go to drawing and we leave a trail, green, width 200, length 1024. And let's see if that works. So if I'm up here, it's blue. If I'm down here, it redraws. Isn't that cool? We should also get rid of these. You probably didn't make these, but if you did, you can get rid of them now. They were just displaying those values for us. All right, let's play Angry Birds. This is not an easy game. Woo! Awesome, you just made a working version of Angry Birds. Now see if you can build off this by adding more birds, or a cooler background, or more things for the birds to hit, or you can make a totally new game using that Slingshot code. Can't wait to see what awesome stuff you all make. Until next time.